Round 2 of the Rugby Championship. Things all kicked off in Auckland on Saturday evening. No, not Eden Park like we used to seeing. It was, of course, at Mount Smart Stadium, where the All Blacks hosted the Springboks in a much-anticipated matchup of round 2 of this competition. This is a game everyone was looking forward to, and they pinpointed this towards being the big decider of where this trophy would go. Unfortunately for the visitors, it wasn't a night for them to remember, as their terribly slow start left them too much to do to come back for in the second 40 minutes. They eventually went down 35 points to 20, but there was a lot to talk about this one, as the All Blacks took home the cookies and made themselves massive favourites with just one round to go to take out the Rugby Championship. So how did this game all start? Well, it was a flurry, and that is probably putting it lightly from the All Blacks, and some poor early play from the Springboks as well. Speed at the breakdown and some big force players, notably Shannon Frizzell and Will Jordan, set the All Blacks up perfectly in the opening 15 minutes or so of this game. They scored points early. 4th minute, they had the opening try to Aaron Smith, which was all created from Will Jordan. Some fantastic play from the right winger, returning back not only to the team, but to some incredible form that's made him one of the most dangerous outside backs in world rugby. He was fantastic throughout this game. We'll talk more about him and Frizzell, who scored the second try and the only 2 tries of that first half. He was brilliant in that opening quarter of an hour. Frizzell got the ball very early on, good carries, and made a lot of yardage. But that barnstorming run, again, off a Will Jordan break, was what really created the All Blacks into a fantastic early position. Alongside a penalty goal from Richie Mo'unga, it was 17 points to 0. The All Blacks led this one, and it was very little comeback from the Springboks in the latter part of the first half. Faf de Klerk got them on the board with a late penalty goal that was replied to swiftly after, with a couple of minutes before half-time, by Richie Mo'unga. 16 minutes, 17 points. That really was the story of the first 40 minutes. If you start this one back off at half-time with the score at 0-0, the Springboks have that just in the bag on their sides of things. But when you're chasing a game so far behind from the first 40 minutes, it really does become a difficult task to get back in the game. They started the second half off much better though. Malcolm Marx grabbing their first try of the night, charging over off the back of a big rolling maul, and that's how South Africa get the job done. Colby converted, but the All Blacks content just to keep the scoreboard ticking over. Richie Mo'unga adding a penalty goal before Cheslin Colby put over one of his specials. An extreme show of pace, didn't even need the step and the go or the power that he composes, but this one was all about his pace and his finishing ability. The big dive in the corner that left the grass stain up the side of his face, that doesn't matter. He got his team not back in the game, but certainly back in that second half. Will Jordan, not to be outdone though, scored back for the All Blacks just 7 minutes later. A little crossfield chip over the top, gathering it in the air, planting it down, and that got the All Blacks surely safely home with a Mo'unga conversion. The latter 10 minutes of this game was just a couple of penalty goals each, with Mo'unga and Smith adding on to that try at the end. 79th minute, Quagga Smith bulldozing his way over, and that was all she wrote. 35 points to 20, take off that Smith try in the 79th minute, and you're 35-15. It certainly was the All Blacks well and truly in control of this match throughout. Those are the facts. Now let's talk about a little bit of what happened and the opinionated stuff in between. The disallowed try. Now this was a big contentious issue. Cheslin Colby, just at the end of the first half, scored what he thought to be quite, I think, a decisive try in this matchup. If the Springboks went into this game, or into the second half of this game, only 10 points behind as opposed to 17, that could have made a lot of big difference to their mentality for that second half of the game. Was it a try? Was it not a try? It was fumbled, I guess, in the end goal by Beauden Barrett as the two players contested for it. Barrett caught it. It was kind of fumbled, and would you call it maybe a little bit of a strip as well in there from Colby as they both went for the ball. Nothing more about it. It went free. Barrett didn't place it down, but it seemed as if Colby had, in fact, planted enough force for it to be considered at least some downward pressure. The TMO deliberated on it for about 300 hours before deciding that he instead had knocked the ball on. Now, I don't agree with that one. As far as you can see an All Blacks flag behind me, for the fairness of the world game, that I think was a try. You try to look at it as equal as you can. Colby got that ball, although it was in the grass, there was still downward pressure enough for me. There wasn't separation between the grass and the hand. I think that was a fair enough try, and it would have made a big difference to how this game went about. Colby and de Klerk were the standouts for the Springboks. I thought those two were extremely good. Throughout the game, they're dangerous, and they really had some barnstorming moments where they could have turned this game on its head. That, from Colby, of course, one of it, but de Klerk, a very solid, consistent player. Did Aaron Smith a couple of times, got done by Aaron Smith a couple of times as well, but overall, I think two key men that had two very good matches. Number 10, Willemse. We talked about in the preview that he could be the weak point that the All Blacks could look to attack through, and of course he had what has probably been described as a bit of a shocker. Wasn't really his best game. He didn't have that kicking tee in his hand, so that wasn't really going to be an issue for him. But overall, he didn't really direct his team well enough around. We didn't see enough of that midfield or enough ball go wide to a very impressive Cezanne Colby. I thought Willie Roux was pretty average at the back, dropping some kick balls that come back the other way from the All Blacks. Stuff that he'd take normally in his sleep was being spilt. And that, when you kick out of your own 22 and the opposition fullback or winger knocks the ball on, you're getting a good gain of a good 40-50 metres, and then a set-piece scrum back the other way, near or in their half as well. So a few key moments like those certainly did tip the Springboks on their heads, but of course that slow start was what really was the catalyst for this poor performance. So why did they start so badly? Well, yes, the All Blacks were very fast and they were very attacking as well. But I think the big deal about this for the All Blacks was that the Springboks didn't dedicate too many players to those breakdowns, and I think that really cost them early. The All Blacks were hitting their runners into the gaps of the defence, which I think is very difficult to do when a little shift left or right can make a big difference on attack or on defence. But they were hitting those holes, which were causing that extra little emphasis through the gap in the tackle, and of course that forward momentum was making a massive difference for the All Blacks. But then of course from the Springboks defensive position, they weren't putting any numbers into the breakdown. You get the tackler and maybe one man going in to try and steal the ball, a disruptor. That was it. He gets blown out. The All Blacks have quickly exposed ball, ready to go. Phase in, phase out, just like that. They were very fast around the breakdown, which we all know a fast breakdown is a very dangerous All Blacks side. Also, the All Blacks, I thought, were doing a little trick that you do see from teams now and again, but when they hit the tackles, they were swiveling in the tackle to face their own players. So they were straight away facing the right way before they actually went to the ground, which was something I think was very well worked out. Is it something we're going to see from teams and players in future? I'm unsure, but I thought that was very interesting to see how they were twisting in the tackles before they hit the ground. That is a result that gives you quicker ball as well. Now, if you're looking at the All Black standouts, I've talked about them already. Will Jordan, Shannon Frizzell, but only one of them I'm going to give the full credit to here. Will Jordan was fantastic. I thought he was fantastic throughout that whole first half and even into the second 40 minutes as well. Shannon Frizzell, now don't give me this rubbish. I've seen it in the media already. This is the coming of age of our number 6. Finally, the All Blacks have an answer to the number 6 jersey. This is the man the All Blacks have been waiting for. The number 6 saviour, the blindside flanker. This is the best man we've had since the days of Jerome Kaino. Now, come on, people. Shannon Frizzell has been in and out this team for a long time. Injuries, of course, he's had problems aplenty around his game and, of course, around his life. But do not tell me that his one good game this season that he seems to be able to pick out against one random opposition, unfortunately for South Africa, was the opening 15 minutes of this matchup. But he is in no way even close to the consistency of grunt and power that we saw from a Shannon Frizzell or a Jerry Collins, rest his soul. great players they were, but they were consistent and they were constantly menaces through the power game. Shannon Frizzell, as we even seen in this game, faded. As the game wore on, he faded more and more, made a few errors and got more to the Shannon Frizzell we usually see in an All Black jersey. Now, I'm a fan of Shannon Frizzell. I think he is a fantastic player when he's on. But when is he on? He's very rarely on like that opening 15 minutes when he can bulldoze through 3 players and make his way to the try line. Great player, great ability and potential, but just doesn't have the consistency to be named the saviour and the answer to that All Blacks number 6 jersey. That's all I'll say. Credit to him. Fantastic match, at least for the first half, but he needs to be more consistent. If you want to be the saviour, Shannon, do it next week. Not that there's obviously nothing for you to do this week, but do it against the Wallabies, and then do it against the Wallabies again, then do it against the Springboks at Twickenham or wherever that silly game's going to be. Do it again and again and again. Prove you're consistent, because one-off games don't win you a World Cup. You can pummel Namibia all you like, Shannon. That's not going to win you a Rugby World Cup. You're going to have to do it against France. You're going to have to do it against South Africa. You're going to have to do it against Australia. Who knows who else? England, Ireland. The potential was really there for anyone to be teed up in semi-finals or quarterfinals. But the fact of the matter is, you've got to do it through pool play. You've got to do it through quarterfinals. You've got to do it through semi-finals. And of course, you can't fall asleep in a grand final. You've got to be consistent through a whole tournament. Is he the best number 6? He probably still is. But is he the saviour? Is he the one that should be the first name on that number 6 jersey on the team sheet? It's a hard push to say that you've got him decisively there straight away. The other thing I'll give credit to was a bit of a rollback of the clock for Aaron Smith. His kicking game was brilliant. Most of the All Blacks kicks were very high and contestable. So they're a bit shorter, they're a bit higher, and they always had a player chasing hard. Now, normally the Springboks are pretty good at dealing with this, but it was a night off for them. It really was. So maybe another day, things could have been a lot different, but for this day at Mount Smart, it was the All Blacks day, and that ferocious opening quarter of an hour has certainly set them on the way to claiming the Rugby Championship in 2023. 35-20, that final game. We could talk about this all afternoon long, but all in all, it was a great start. Some clinical plays and game plans from the All Blacks, and just an off night for the Springboks. I don't think they're that bad. I don't think there's a 15-point difference between these two sides on another day, but today there certainly was, and I think we'll see much more from those Springboks. If anyone's going to learn from this performance, I think the Springboks are going to take more away from it than the All Blacks are. Now the All Blacks are going, wow, this was pressure game. This was big-time performance-required game. And we stood up. And credit to them. They did stand up. They played very, very well. Their best game this year by far. But they need to stay a bit more humble. And they need to know that that wasn't, I think, the best the Springboks have to offer. They will be better. And we've already spoken a lot about the number 10 jumper. And Handré Pollard will be waiting in the wings. He's a game changer. He is a difference maker. And I think they will be better in future encounters. But the All Blacks won it 35-20. And that is a great start for the New Zealand weekend. The second game of the weekend, just a couple of hours after the first, was the Wallabies versus the Pumas. And unfortunately, the high level of quality rugby we saw in the opening game, especially that first 15 minutes from the All Blacks, which will be talked about for years, I'm sure, wasn't replicated at all by either side here in the second encounter. The Wallabies and the Pumas was a game that would have, if you had here, unlike me, who's got very little of it, you'd be ripping it out, because it was a very frustrating encounter. But all in all, though, it was a very close, tight, and exciting encounter right till that final minute of the matchup. It started off pretty well for the Wallabies, though, with Leniki Tau and Quade Cooper accumulating 10 unanswered points in the opening 10 minutes of this matchup before the Pumas hit their way back after the halfway point of the first half. Emiliano Boffelli grabbing a penalty goal and a conversion to the De La Fuente try. Very, very good De La Fuente try as well, using a little bit of guile, but the strength in the tackle from the midfielder was very prominent in this play for him. And I thought Leniki Tau, a player who's promised a lot in this Wallaby setup, but quite often doesn't really get the just desserts, I think, grabbing the opening try for the Wallabies got them off to a good start. Unfortunately, though, the big talking point from that first 40 minutes will be just the ill-discipline of Wallaby forwards. This time Arnold going off 1 minute from the break, a yellow card just for stupid stuff, just getting in, just stupid stuff. We've seen it with their A team as well, just getting in niggly little throwing players, hitting players, or just doing stupid stuff. That's just all in that top, 10% of the mind, just to not do that sort of rubbish. Unfortunately for the Wallabies, it did cost them. As they went to half-time, the score at 10-10, still anyone's game. It was till the 80th minute as well, anyone's game. But after half-time, the Pumas got in the lead. Julian Montoya scoring the try, Boffelli converting, and there at the 46-minute mark, it was a 17-10 lead to the Pumas. Montoya, very good at what he does, and he's very good at scoring tries from those set-piece positions. It was replied, though, Nick White doing what he does best as well. Very sniping, elusive, and good supportive runner as well. He grabbed the try back for the Wallabies. Quade Cooper converting to make it 17 apiece. Now, here's a bit of a difference maker. On the about hour mark of this game, Emiliano Boffelli had a penalty. The final penalty of this game, which is quite intriguing because we know it was close, but the fact of the matter is decided by tries was extremely, extremely exciting. It was the exciting winger of Carreras that got us back to a Pumas lead, extended out now to 10 points along with that Emiliano Boffelli try. He really is very, very exciting. Mateo Carreras scoring on that wing. Just pace and a bit of power, a bit of elusiveness as well. Boffelli converted that before the Wallabies come straight back into it. We talked a little about Ikitau, about what he offers and just how he doesn't seem to be making that impact. Well, his midfield partner, Samu Kerevi, did make that impact as he scored on the 71st minute. Now, Cooper converted that to make it 27-24. Argentina still in the lead, and we were into the mid-70 minutes here, and the Argentinians were hot on attack. Just 5 or 10 metres out from the Australian line, looking to put this one to bed, and then a player who everyone hates to say his name, but I'm not going to call him the stupid crap that they give it on the TV. Mark Nwangani-Tawasi, intercept ball from his own 22, 10 out from his own, maybe even 5 out from his own line, goes coast to coast, one end to the other to score the go-ahead try for the Wallabies. Cooper converted to make it 31-27. Nwangani-Tawasi has really been a standout. He's just another one of those Australian players that looks good in Super Rugby. Not fantastic, but good enough. But transforms that perfectly. Even steps it up when it comes to international level. We thought that might be it. 76 minutes gone. Australia have just scored. They were high on confidence and they were really happy with their performance to get to this position. But the Pumas really are a team that don't give up. And positioning is something they do very, very well. And just within a minute, they were back in attacking areas. Thanks to what? Let me guess, the errors of the Wallabies. Now, both sides terribly guilty at making so many simple mistakes in this game. Poor kicks, poor hands, poor decisions, aimless plays, just silly stuff all around the field. This final minute of the game, though, was just engrossing. The try was eventually scored from Gonzalez on the 78th minute, and of course, Boffelli converted, as pointless as that was for him. But what a finish it was. If you didn't see the highlights of this game, or even the last 10 minutes, I'll get the last 10 minutes because you'll see Kerevi score, the Wallabies get back in the game, Nwangani-Tawasi's intercept, which really puts them in the lead again, and then the fight back from the Pumas, who dominated that last 10 minutes, but ultimately lost it quite poorly when they were on the attack for the most part of that period. The impact, though, of Gonzalez, keeping the forwards, doing what they do well, and just dominating that contact, recycling. The backs weren't going to see that ball. You know how the Pumas play. They kept hitting it, they kept smashing it, and they eventually got the reward and it was just as well. The Wallabies' defence was tested, and it held a pretty good job as well. Now, if we're going to talk about talking points of this matchup, just the mistakes, the errors, and just the general ability to play high quality and consistent rugby where you would have phase after phase after phase. Now the Pumas got a number of chances where they were phase after phase after phase, but that credits to the Wallabies defence to actually hold them out for those long periods. When you're talking 22 to 22 sort of areas, this game was certainly one that was played with both sides not able to really take control of that area of the pitch. Just poor kicking, like I said before, and just the errors, poor hands, and just isolating players. Just those simple sort of things they really did struggle with throughout that period of the matchup. I thought for the Wallabies, they'll be thinking they should have won this game. Eddie Jones certainly frustrated. He was extremely frustrated in the coach's box as well. But we look through the team. That yellow card cost him as well. The Argentinian forward pack was immense. I thought they had a great game. Guys like Matera, I thought were a big step up from last week against the All Blacks. But certainly that whole back row, that second row, their front row, all of the pack were another step up. And they kind of took control away from the back line if they wanted to get involved. It was old school sort of Pumas, and that they kept it nice and tight like that with their own forwards. And then when the chance was out there for the backs, they did like to run. We saw that try from Carreras. Very, very good try as well for him. For the Wallabies, though, they just don't really know where their good part of play is, do they? They try to use their midfield. Their outside backs are getting slightly better, though not the greatest game from Tom Wright at fullback as well. He was a bit in and out of the matchup. Certainly defensively, he was not really involved in this one enough. So they got work to do, the Wallabies. A lot of work to be done there in those areas. But definitely the forward pack defended well, and they got some good tries, good opportunistic opportunities. It's good to see Ikitau and Karevi getting on the scoreboard and impacting the game a little bit more than they're kind of allowed by the way the Wallabies play. And of course, tight and close. First close game we've really had in the Rugby Championship so far this season. But that'll about do us for a bit of a review. The final score in this one, of course, was 31-34. Didn't say it at the start, but the Pumas got the job done in the end. A 3-point victory. The big point was that Boffelli penalty goal around the hour mark that proved to be quite a pivotal kick for this matchup. The Wallabies going down again, 2 losses for them, 1 win, 1 loss for the Pumas, as are the Springboks, but it is the All Blacks at the top of the table with an undefeated 2-0 record so far. Can they take the title out? They've still got to play the Wallabies. There's a week off for this round before we get to the final round. The Wallabies will be hosting the All Blacks, and then, of course, the Springboks with the Pumas as well. So keep tuned in for those ones. We'll have reviews and previews coming as per usual. We've also got some Pacific Nations rugby this weekend as well. We'll try to have a look at too. But from today and from me, from the weekend of round 2, thank you for tuning and watching. Hope you enjoyed. What were your standout points from these matches this weekend? What did you think about the Wallabies and the Pumas, and, of course, the All Blacks and the Springboks? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. And of course, I'll see you all next weekend for some more rugby action. Until then, thanks for watching. And as always, take care.